on to our final poll question before we get into panel number 3. So our question for you is, marketing powerhouse Bozoma St. John said, we need to show up. There's too many times when you've worked on a project and your colleagues are using we, not we, it is I. What can we do to elevate the voice and brand of women in leadership? And your options are: be intentional about the day-to-day interactions with women, create leadership opportunities tailored with women in mind, expand the networks that enable women to lead, or put women in leadership roles to make decisions that impact them. So we'll let those responses roll in. Go ahead and submit your responses, and we'll check out what they are as they're rolling in. Give you a couple seconds. I just want to point out again, I know we've got several questions in the Q&A section that we will be facilitating with our panelists, and we'll make sure to get you those responses after our event. Let's take a look at our responses for this poll question. All right, looks like it's 72% believe that we must put women in leadership roles to make decisions that directly impact them. All right, so we have been looking at ways companies should diversify their executive suite, as well as how they can incorporate and elevate Black women in leadership roles. But how do we ensure women establish a synchronous company brand while also staying true to their own authentic professional and personal narrative? How do we encourage, promote, and support Black women to feel engaged in genuine ways that speak to their values and needs of belonging? The balance is often a challenging endeavor to strike. Our next speakers will delve deeper into the topic of authentic voice and brand recognition for Black women in leadership. Dr. Atira Charles has been CEO of the Charles Consulting Group, a boutique consulting firm focusing on issues of diversity, inclusion, and wellness. As of November 2020, she has joined the executive leadership team of Moet, Hennessy as the head of Inclusion, Diversity, and Equity of North America. She is thrilled to make the shift to shape, direct, and transform the D&I strategy of this global organization while also contributing to the goals of the parent company, Louis Vuitton Moet Hennessy Group. Dr. Charles' research has been published in numerous academic journals and media outlets, and it has been presented internationally. She has worked with many global Fortune 500 organizations exploring the role of identities in the workplace. She is also a TEDx speaker and has an insightful talk entitled Rethinking Diversity and Inclusion as a Health Dilemma. Her work has been featured in magazines such as Black Enterprise Magazine and Essence. She has also been the recipient of numerous awards, such as the Florida State University Guardian of the Flame Award and the FAMU Outstanding 125 Alumni Award. She was even nominated by the Obama White House as a change maker for the 2016 State of the Woman Summit. Organizations and collaborators speak very highly of her ability to impact the cognitive processes of employees in order to promote their psychological and behavioral change. Shareka Nelson has over 20 years of experience in human resources, specifically talent acquisition and diversity and inclusion. She is a seasoned executive leader with a unique ability to translate business goals into people strategy. Her work focuses on driving for innovation through creating organizations that reflect the different perspectives and communities of the world, while actively working to be inclusive and equitable. She has led talent organizations for several global Fortune 500 organizations and is recognized as a results-oriented thought leader in diversity, inclusion, senior leadership coaching, employee engagement, and analytics. She also provides direct consulting support to organizations and individuals through Intentional Impact Group. She joined Coursera as the organization's first global head of diversity, equity, and inclusion. And in this role, she will partner with executive leadership and the organization to develop and implement change by ingraining diversity, equity, and inclusion in all business goals and strategy. Welcome, Atira and Shareka. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having us.
Thanks for having us.
Absolutely. So excited to see you both. I want to kind of dig in right away and get to know a little bit about your roles. So we'll start with you, Sharika. Please share with us a little bit about what your role entails and how you reach this position.
Thank you. Um, Today has been such an amazing wealth of magic that has been brought to life. So I am excited for the conversation. Excited to see you, Atira. Haven't seen you in a long time.
I know.
Um, so in my role, I like to say my work is really about changing systems. It is really focused on dismantling, disrupting those norms that have not worked for many. And as I think Tamika referred to, has kept those that have been comfortable for far too long. So I focus on sort of the spectrum of work of education, awareness, and understanding, leading into behavior change and modification, and then impacting business decisions. I really strive to make sure that when we think about diversity, equity, and inclusion and belonging, that what we're doing is weaving this work into the core DNA of an organization and how we approach our business goals and objectives. So, shifting the focus from thinking about diversity, equity, and inclusion as the problems we are trying to solve, but instead thinking about our work as the solutions and the solves to the business problems that we are seeking to change. I started my work as a recruiter, so my focus has always been about talent and creating opportunity and creating space. I don't think about it as giving voice to people because people come to the table with a voice. Instead, my work is about creating space at the table for those voices to be heard. And I've spent the last 21 years working on talent strategy, working on talent acquisition, focusing on retention strategies. I think there's been a theme today, especially for the current state, where there's a lot of excitement around recruiting Black and Brown talent. We also have that same level of energy around retaining, growing, and developing that talent within organizations. And that's where I really think my focus has been, particularly over the past, I'd say maybe 7 to 12 years.
Fantastic. Thank you for sharing that experience with us. Atira, please let us know a little more about what your job entails and how you reach this position.
Sure. Hi, everybody. Good to see you. I first have to say, Sharika and I actually met as a client and a vendor before a couple of years ago with a tech company. And so when we saw each other on the email list and text list, that was awesome. And I think that just speaks to literally like why we're having this event, right? Those Black women in this field, we all are just a half a degree of separation.
Mhm.
Especially those of us that have been in this work for a long time. So it's a pleasure to be in this space and see the both of us where we are now. So claps and kudos to you, Sharika.
Same to you.
So I'm Dr. Atira Charles. My road to the diversity C-suite space was a little bit non-traditional. So when I came out of school, I went to Florida A&M University. I did my undergrad and my MBA there. And while I was in my MBA program, anytime I would come back from internship, my then professor, who's now the dean of the School of Business at FAMU, Dr. Friday Stroud, she said, "You always have questions. You never like being on internship and you always have questions and you want to be the boss. But you have a really good questions, right? So have you thought about getting your PhD?" I was like, I did not come to college, to the business school of FAMU to be a teacher. Like, I want to be CEO of Fortune 500 company, right? All of us early 90s kids, going late 90s kids going to college, we were ready to lead. But she said, there's more to getting a PhD than just being a teacher, right? At 2 o'clock on a Tuesday, Thursday. And so she said, why don't you follow and apprentice myself and some of the other professors, and you'll see the things we do in consulting. You'll see when we're working with businesses. You'll see the research that we're working on. And I did that my whole MBA program. And so I decided after that that I did want to get my PhD so that I could what? Find the answers to the issues of diversity, race, and gender. So my whole career has been rooted in this. I've been very passionate. And just like now in 2021, people still say, oh, as a Black woman, be careful just getting labeled as the diversity and inclusion person. When I was getting my PhD, people said the same thing. And this is in 2003, 2004. Oh, don't be the Black woman studying race and gender. So it was always seen as this like, be careful. And I'm like, why is everybody so scared? Now what I understand is that I think the world was just scared of the solution, right? And the more of us that saw that we could impact that, I think it, it challenged the space. So I went from there to getting my PhD and then going into academia. So I taught at Florida A&M University, Florida State University, Northeastern University, all over the place. But during that time, I also was consulting with Fortune 500 companies throughout the way. And so what I was realizing through that time is, okay, wait a second. There's something that I have that's different, right? And so when we're talking about authentic voice here, the first set of years, I didn't necessarily like have I'm not going to say the confidence, but just I wouldn't have vocally said that out loud that way. But when you work in a space for a long time, you get feedback from the world that tells you what your skill sets are, right? And I knew that I had a secret sauce to doing diversity and inclusion work that was making me get clients above some of the other larger consulting companies as like a one-woman show professor from FAMU, And I'm like, there's a reason. And what I now know the reason is, which guides even my work now that I'm here at Moet Hennessy, is it's about learning and education. So at the core, I'm very clear, no matter what title I have, I'm an educator. And when the opportunity came for me to work with Moet Hennessy as their head of D&I for North America, the CEO was very clear about him valuing my learning and education background and allowed me to walk in my gift in that here, right? A lot of times when we get into these roles, the company already has a vision for what it looks like. And I'm blessed to be somewhere where the inaugural role was built to my skill set. And I think that's why we're seeing a lot of the impact that we're having now. So just for everyone that's, on the emerging leader side, trying to find your way, like keep up with your secret sauce because the right place will want to taste it. So.
Love that. I love that, Atira. And I love that you were basically recognized. Your brand was basically recognized because you stayed true to your own authentic self and what you wanted to do with education and DEI. I love that. And that takes me into this question of what does an authentic voice mean to you and why does it matter? Shareka, we'll start with you.
Yeah. When I think about authenticity in my voice, there is a quote that I often go to. As my older sister says, I not only love a good quote, I try to live a good quote. And there's a quote by Maya Angelou that says, I do my best because I'm counting on you, counting on me. And what that means for me is that the more I show up in the full authenticity of who Shareka is, the more it creates space, permission, and empowerment for others to show up in her, his, or their own unique voice. I've recognized that it is extremely important for me to be very clear about my superpowers and to be very unapologetic in what those superpowers are and how I choose to use them within an organization. We each are created in a uniqueness, and that unique voice, perspective, insight, and those experiences, everything that makes us sort of the total sum of who we are. As an organization, as you find an organization that is prepared and ready to utilize those superpowers, you are able to drive for impact, to drive for change. And there's plenty of research that really speaks to the amount of wasted energy that we have when we sort of hide. And I'll speak to Atira's work when we wear the mask that really sort of covers up the who we are. Harnessing that power and not being afraid of showing my authenticity and taking my mask off has been a changer for me when I think about my image, my brand. But I also think about it, and this was referred to earlier in the conversation, from that perspective of the pie model. I know that for me, many decisions that are impacting me, they are being made when sometimes I'm not even in the room. So for me, it's really important that my performance, that my image, and that my exposure, that I've been really deliberate about making sure I'm excelling in my work. Because every time you walk in a door in whatever dimension that you bring with you, you're either having the opportunity to destroy, reshape, rebuild stereotypes and biases that others have, or create sort of a whole new paradigm of understanding. So I'm very confident in focusing on my work, focusing on my image, who I am, and making sure that aligns with how I show up. Then also making sure that others are very aware of the story of Shareka, as I like to say, so that when I'm not in those rooms, that the right narrative that others are speaking on my behalf is in alignment with the truth of who I am. And I think when you are able to harness that, that gives you a power over your brand and your image, both inside the room as well as when you're not.
Oh, I absolutely love that. I love that, Shareka. I love that alignment. That alignment with your voice and your narrative is that brand. That's literally that brand recognition. I love that. So how do we do this? I mean, this is fantastic. We got a kind of a clear approach of what authenticity means. But how do Black women remain authentic to who they are while also making sure that there's a balance between that and fitting in with a company culture and brand? How do we strike that balance? Atira, we'll start with you.
Okay, one of the things, and Shareka referenced it, I say my public figure brand through my work on the art of unmasking. What I noticed was whether I was teaching women of color, whether I was consulting, whether I was speaking, every time after I finished speaking, some woman of color would come to me and be like, Dr. Charles, can I talk to you for a sec? Can I talk to you for a sec? And I'd be like, yes, she would tell me a story. And what I said was, you know what? We have to start to capture these narratives. And so I started something called the Mask Project, which basically started collecting narratives of women of color who were experiencing this hiding, this concealing that we felt the need to do, even when speaking to each other. There was power in that whisper because it was saying, sister, I trust you, but I don't even trust this conference hallway to even tell this story. And so when we think about what authenticity means and what it is, it really does come down to authenticity gets better at. Because I think a lot of times there's this idea of, I'm going to bring my whole entire self to the table. No, not a good idea, right? Authenticity isn't about bringing 1000% of yourself to the table. It's about having a piece about the different parts of yourself that you present in any situation, right? Because there's certain social environments you present a certain self, certain interactions, certain moments, and that's okay. When people get the anxiety and the distress, is when they're revealing and showing parts of themselves that are not true to who they are, right? So there's nothing wrong with switching it up, changing it up, but at least the parts you're switching to and changing to have to be you, right? And
relevance.
Right, it has to be a part of who you are. Like I'm a loud, candor-filled, straight talker, right? From New York, when I first started doing consulting, a sister came and pulled me to the side. She said, I don't know how you do what you do as straightforward as you do it. And I said, it's because I'm me and people trust me, right? People can hear truth through trust. A lot of this work of presenting your authentic self is building trust so that people can hear your truth. But what tends to happen is we wear these masks that hide and conceal, and it doesn't allow our authentic self out. So guess what? They don't know who we are either. Let's just call it what it is. If we're wearing all these masks, they can't connect in a line, as Shareka said, with who we are if we're presenting a false self. The energy will always tell the story. So as women of color, as Black women, I think we have to also, while we're pushing for inclusion from organizations, we have to make sure we're not self-excluding by not being ourselves, right? And leaning out away from our authentic place. Because I tell people, it's easy to do the work I do because I'm Atira in every space, every lane I'm at. So I don't get stressed out switching it up, right? And I think we all have to get to a place where we have less to switch up.
I love that, Atira. And I've really been having the conversation of moving organizations from talking about bringing your whole authentic self to the organization, because that's not the reality, right? Instead, how do we focus on bringing the version of yourself that you feel most comfortable sharing with an organization and with others? Because the version of Shareka that I may be between 9 to 5 may not be the same version that shows up with my family or with members of my inner circle. And that is okay, because to your point, they are all still versions of the true Shareka.
I love that. I love that so much. And, I think it's really important as we're talking to the decision makers that are attending right now on our call as well is to express to them, what can they do? What can they do to ensure that Black women are empowered when they're coming into the workplace, and as leaders to express their unique, authentic voice and be recognized for that brand more effectively? We'll start with you, Shareka.
Yeah. And so I'm going to take a traditional Shareka approach to this and answer a yes and to this.
Love it.
So the first part I'll speak to would be decision makers. And I sort of the simple words I have are get out of the way. And what I mean by that is we think about creating access to decision making. We think about changing the systems from how we bring talent into an organization to how we promote talent to our compensation practices. We think about how we are developing talent, how we are creating opportunities for access and visibility and owning P&Ls within an organization for Black women. How are we creating, moving away from the mentorship to the true sponsorship and advocacy for Black women? How do you get out of the way of the change, the systemic change that needs to occur, and focusing on not only what you need to bring or add to an organization, but also what you have to give up? Because when we think about sort of that three-legged stool of power, position, and privilege, it is human nature to want to protect those things that keep us comfortable. But we know on the other side of that protection, on the other side of that comfort, that's where the change is really going to happen, so that this norm around authenticity and the ability for Black women to speak our truths and speak our truths loudly, that's where that will occur. And then my and to that, and speak to just Black women, is simply that. Continue to speak your truths and do it loudly. Hiding behind a mask, shading away from that true and authenticity of your voice, your experience, and those superpowers that you have, do no justice to yourself, to an organization, or to the others that are looking at you as role models as they continue to rise up the ladders that we have had access to.
For sure. And oh, go ahead, someone, sorry.
No, go ahead, please. I love it. Just go ahead. It's
Okay. So when I think about, because people ask me the question, wait, you're leaving academia, leaving your own consulting business to go internal to a company? Like, huh, what, why, right? And the reason that I did was because there was a certain set of things that existed at Moet Hennessy that said, if I'm going to take that step, this is where I'm going to take it at, because I see certain things. So the first one is trust, and we talked about that already. I knew that the CEO and senior leadership team trusted me to do what I needed to do. So these are things leaders need to do for the Black women in this space. Give us resources. We can't make Black girl magic with no Black girl resources, right? So when I knew I was joining an organization that was going to give me the resources I needed to do the job, I said, okay, bet, I'm there. And then also give us autonomy.
Yes.
You already know there's walls that exist for us. You already know there's biases that are working against us. Structure our roles with some autonomy so we could just buckle down and do the work, okay, with less walls. Then also leaders, especially our white male leaders, give us some of your social capital. Give the Black women leaders in your space the armor that when they're interacting in the organization with people who may not be as ready as you, that you have their back, right? That, oh, well, the CEO supports it. Look, I may not get it, but hey, he has a back, so, right? That also helps get the work done. And then don't have Black women leaders sitting up there by themselves all the time. Hire more. I think that we get real comfortable with just having one, and then it's like, oh, well, we did that, check. No, give the support. And I don't care what space we're in, education, business, community, church, sorority life, anywhere. Black women thrive with Black women. It's a sisterhood and a support we learn from the preschool playground. And so for organizations to be successful, with Black women have to see themselves. And guess what? It can get super lonely at the top. I'm really blessed to be on an executive leadership team with another Black woman, Jasmine Allen, who was just recently promoted to senior vice president of Hennessy. She runs the whole Hennessy team, y'all, like the whole thing. She's the first senior vice president, Black woman at the company. And seeing her face on a Zoom makes me smile. And I say that unapologetically. You know, I'll say that internal to the company, actually, I do pretty often, right? It matters to see and know that you have someone there, right, that understands all the levels with you as you're navigating. So those would be the things I would tell leaders to do.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Atira and Shareka. I know we are over time, but I just want to let you know that this was incredibly valuable for all of our listeners here attending, and we truly appreciated your experiences and advice, and I appreciated your time. Thank you.
Thank you.
So this is a conclusion of our first episode of Elevating Black Women in Business from Yardstick Management's DEI in Action series. We want to thank all of our panelists and all of our viewers for joining us today for our inaugural event. Please go to yardstickmanagement.com and subscribe for more news, and follow us on social media for continuous updates on upcoming future events. Let us know what you think by writing to us directly. We'd love to hear from you. Until next time, be well and stay in touch.
She says she really grew up boy like me. Don't believe in nothing but the Almighty.